Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me today and taking time out of your busy schedule, especially at this time of the year. It tells me that this topic matters to you and it genuinely is great to see you. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Chrissie, and every day I work with business owners, professionals and leaders who are brilliant at what they do, but they end up being the glue that holds everything and everyone together. They're tired of repeating themselves, of carrying that mental load of fixing things that should already be sorted, staying late, working weekends, and genuinely being the one who always notices what's going wrong. If that feels familiar, then you're in exactly the right place. Most people don't say this sort of thing out loud because they think it means that they're failing. And it absolutely doesn't. It simply means that the business has outgrown its previous model. So, in the next hour, I'm going to show you why teams behave the way they do, what's keeping them stuck, and more importantly, exactly how you can break that cycle so 2026 doesn't look like another year of having the same results. Now, I'm not saying that you've had a bad year, of course, but every time I speak with a business owner, they do tell me that there's always room for improvement, right? So, can anybody relate to that? I know I can. So before we get going, let me start off by telling you a little bit about me. And I promise this won't take a long time, but I could be anybody, I guess. So it's probably easier for me to give you a little bit of context explaining why I'm here and why I do what I do. So for several years now, I've been working with businesses who absolutely want a self-driven, accountable, high-performing team. A team that solves problems, offers suggestions, is proactive and genuinely cares about the business as much as the business owner does. And yeah, these people do exist. Most of the people I work with are what I would call accidental leaders. So for me, this is technically brilliant people, amazing at the job that they've trained long and hard for. And their business grew organically, and suddenly they're responsible for a team of actual humans without ever really being taught how to lead them properly. Myself, I've led big teams, I've led small teams, I've run L&D functions and been actively part of culture change projects across all sorts of sectors and industries. And in every business that I step into, the same things pop up again and again. Businesses typically don't get stuck because of their people. They get stuck because their people processes and structures, things like day-to-day communications, meetings, skills and trainings, those sorts of things didn't adapt to keep up as the business grew. And I've also been that accidental leader, so thinking I'm doing all the right things, running around, being insanely busy, working really hard, and still getting more frustrated, losing my confidence, having that imposter syndrome, and burning out. And there was a point, particularly early on in my career, when I thought, well, maybe I'm just not cut out for this. Maybe I've applied and been promoted into the wrong job. But the reality was, nobody had actually ever shown me how to lead. And that's why it matters for me. I believe so passionately in what I do. And I want different outcomes for the people that I work with because I know and understand the pain and how it feels to not be able to do that. And it so is possible. It really is possible to learn. So all of these experiences have shown me the 5 underlying issues behind team inaction. So I think it's important that we all get on the same page before we deep dive into the content today. And I so wanted to share these 5 things that I've learned with you. They underpin everything I teach and, are consistent with everybody that I've been fortunate enough to work with. What shocked me is that I've observed these issues in totally different businesses with totally different people, and yet the same issues showed up every single time. So what I'd love for you to do is have a think as we go through and just let me know in the chat if any of these resonate with you. So it's a safe space, but it does help me to kind of tailor the workshop to ensure that you get the most out of it. So as we go through each of them, just pop a 1 or 2 or 3, etc., number in the chat that resonates or triggers you the most. So the first one then, as much as you try really hard to lead by example with your charisma, with your enthusiasm, it's really hard to do that consistently, day in, day out, 24 hours a day. And turns out providing clarity is actually the thing that's most important to your team. Your team aren't doing a bad job. They really aren't, but they could 100% be more proactive. You might notice that you're spending lots of time rescuing or problem solving, directing them, and it feels like it's time for them to step up to the plate and actually be more proactive. You know, the reality is your team are talented, they are capable, and they're intelligent. However, it can feel like they are simply ticking the task boxes that you've laid out. And maybe it feels like they're hanging back with ideas rather than being creative, and rather than suggesting ways to move the business forward or the piece of work forward. You're probably tired of guessing how your team are feeling and equally what they're thinking, and you wish that they would just be more open, share some vulnerabilities, and be genuinely more forthcoming with how they're feeling, but also with feedback for yourself about how you might improve or do things differently as a leader. And you wish your team had a clear process for communication, so one that allowed consistent progression of conversations every day rather than things going back and forth or throwaway comments or small conflicts kind of appearing everywhere. So which one of those or several of those resonate with you? Just pop in the chat now. Okay, so there's a variety that goes from all of them. Number 1, number 4, number 3. So, okay, it sounds like they all resonate with a good majority of you, so that's great. So for me, effort isn't the problem. Leaders don't need to try harder or to work harder. They need to create the right environment, because for me, when the environment changes, behavior will follow suit, and therefore behavior will change. So I'm not here to make you feel bad or accuse you or feel like you're doing a terrible job. I'm here just to share my experiences of what the best leading companies are doing so that you can start to implement these same things into your business. Now, let me ask you another couple of questions so I can get a bit more of an understanding about who you are and what you're all about. So I've got a poll, and what I would like you to do is think about the questions that will come up on the poll and just answer honestly. So there is no judgment implied here at all. There is absolutely no right or wrong. But what I would like you to do is, when I launch the poll, is just pick the one that drains your energy the most. So not the one you think I want to hear or the one you think you want to choose, but the one that for you drains your energy the most. So let me just bring that poll up onto the screen so you'll see that now. And I'll just give you a couple of moments to answer that. Okay, so we've got a couple coming through, most of all. So giving feedback that actually sticks, getting people to take ownership instead of waiting for instructions seems to be the ones that are in the lead at the moment. Okay, fantastic. That's brilliant. Thank you very much for sharing that. And every single one of these shows up in healthy businesses. So just because they resonate with you or just because they might be happening in your business doesn't mean that there's anything particularly wrong. As I say, healthy businesses have all of these going on. But what it does mean is that they show up typically in different stages of growth, and the problem becomes bigger or compounds when they don't get resolved. So let's be honest for a second. Most founders think that their problem is with the people, with the team. And I'm going to say something slightly controversial here, and I promise you it isn't intended to offend, it's not intended to point fingers, but it is intended to make you sit up and think. Okay, so here goes. Most founders think they have a people problem. They don't. What's really happening is that there is a structure and a communication in the business that unintentionally is training the team to rely on the leader. So let me just say that again. What's really happening is there is a structure and communication problem in the business that is unintentionally training the team to rely on the leader. And it happens slowly. So gradually, day by day, week by week, month by month, these things are starting to play out. So one day, the leader might just be helping out or doing something because they think it's the right thing to do or they want to be helpful. But then they end up repeating it, repeating themselves, fixing things because it's quicker, chasing deadlines, carrying the mental load, and ultimately they become the bottleneck. So I once worked with a founder, let's call him David. Now, obviously, I can't share my clients' names and businesses for confidentiality reasons, but let's call him David. And his team literally waited for him to approve everything. Even small tasks, he was responsible for signing things off, for answering questions, for making decisions. And the crazy part is that he actually started to believe that this was normal. It isn't. It's completely optional. It was his choice to allow it to continue. And really importantly, it's absolutely totally fixable. So things never start out as a leader saying, well, I want absolute control and I'm going to micromanage. It starts out as people trying to be genuinely helpful. And that's why, for me, it's so dangerous. Can everybody see that? Does that resonate? Even the smallest of differences can have a long-term impact. So let's face it, most business owners are juggling a lot. I know I am. And I know firsthand how busy you are, and that often creates the conditions for the problem to persist. Every founder, every business owner that I've worked with is juggling hundreds of hats. So see how many of these resonate with you. So sales, HR, ops, finance, marketing. What are some of the others? Just pop in the chat some of the other weirdest hats or job titles that you've unofficially held. Okay, so we've got, what have we got here? Coffee maker, yeah. Chief toilet roll changer, yeah. Cat herder, yeah. Lots and lots of different things that are not on our job description, right? But we end up juggling all these things every single day. And here's the thing, when life gets insanely busy, communication starts to fall apart. Now, we might think that we are communicating more, but the reality is most of that conversation happens in our heads. Our self-talk gets quicker, louder, faster, and very little comes out of our mouths. So communication actually starts to fall apart. We rush it, we react emotionally, or we just patch things together last moment and throw them out there. I've done it myself, so I know that it's not that we're bad at communication. It's just that for that moment in time, we're overwhelmed. And the decisions that we make when we're overwhelmed, well, I'm sure you can relate, they're usually purely reactive, purely tactical, and absolutely, definitely not strategic. They solve the problem today, so right here in this moment, but they often create long-term headaches and dependency for tomorrow. So for me, this is where founders quietly lose strategic time, not in big, huge, dramatic ways, but in thousands of tiny, tiny interruptions and patterns of doing things that aren't really their role to do, that just compound. And I see this pattern every single time that I work with a team. It's almost like clockwork. So just put a thumbs up, an emoji, a comment in the chat. How many of you can relate to that? Yeah, there's quite a few thumbs up coming through and some face. Yeah, excellent. Okay, So how does this stress show up day to day in our teams? So it's a great question, right? Pressure and stress expose our default patterns of behaviour. When we are under work-related stress and pressure, our habits, most of which we're not aware of, and those patterns of habits will create the environment for your team's behaviour. We are often, unless we are highly, highly, highly self-aware, just running at the behest of our habits. So here again, another poll, and I would love you all to be vulnerable with me. So as before, no judgment, no right or wrong. It's just a bit of self-reflection. So I would like you to choose, when I open up the poll, which one of these reflects what you typically do when you're under pressure. Okay, so let's launch that poll again. Okay, so yeah, just pop in which one resonates with you most. And again, as I say, absolutely no judgment, no right or wrong. I'll give you a couple of moments more. Okay. So I get more directive, just tell people what to do, and I get frustrated, wonder why no one steps up, seem to be the ones that are coming through most of all. So that is absolutely typical. So thank you for filling that in. And it's absolutely typical of what I see in so many businesses. So just reflect for a moment in your own business or in the team that you work on within, sorry, how might that dependency, or how might that thing that you've just identified be causing a dependency in your business or within your team? What might it be causing or costing you? And this leads us directly into the balancing act that every leader has to manage. So for me, leadership is a series of paradoxes. It's two seemingly opposite things that actually, instead of being opposition or need to be working together to get the best results. And this is where most leaders get stuck because they tend to favour one trait or one behaviour over the partner pair. So, for example, when you are too consultative, but you don't have clear opinions and you don't share those clear opinions, the team will end up making assumptions about what they're being asked to deliver. If you're too nice, the team will think they can get away with doing whatever they want. If you're too rules driven, then the team run away and are scared. If you're too helpful, they put everybody else's needs before their own, and the team, and that holds the team back and might feel resentful, staying late, taken advantage of. Too frank, and the team retreat from offering up their ideas. If you're too diplomatic, the team think that you're hiding things from them or are too soft. So there's this real balancing act between, you need to be frank and diplomatic. You need to be both together. You need to be consultative, but equally have your own opinions and be able to voice them and state what those decisions and expectations are. Because every strength, when overused or used in isolation of its partner opposite, becomes what we call a blind spot or a potential derailer. And when we're under work-related stress, those derailers are the thing that are, absolutely going to hold us back. They're going to get in the way of moving forward. And this is one of the most common things I see when I work with businesses every day. Most leadership problems come from overusing a strength that once made you successful. So that's where we start in my ASCENTS program, by identifying strengths and thinking about how we can leverage those more, but also when those strengths might become potential derailers and the blind spots that you might have. And then we reshape the leadership identity so you can look after your own needs whilst still being helpful or still being diplomatic or kind or whatever the opposite is. So let's have a look now at the real reasons why communication is so difficult to practice. I've worked with many founders who are brilliant at strategy, at vision and execution, but they still get blindsided by miscommunication, and it's never just one thing. Every message we send travels through filters. The person receiving it interprets it through their own lens, through fears or past experiences, through assumptions, through their own trainings. And I'll just give you an example of that. I once saw a simple statement of let's just adjust this process slightly, be read as personal criticism. So it wasn't the message, it wasn't the intention that the leader had, but that is how it was landed with the individual, because they filtered it through their own lens. And when you add emotions into the mix, so stress and frustration or excitement or urgency or panic or whatever it is, they all distort clarity. And the problem with that is that people end up saying the wrong thing in the wrong way to the wrong person, and we all end up with a totally wrong result. And I'm sure you can resonate with this. And I know this has certainly happened to me. One leader sent a straightforward email to the whole team, thinking the message was quite simple and explicit. And half the team exploded, thinking they'd been singled out, that they were in the wrong, that they were being blamed for something. Because they'd all just assumed, so that the leader had assumed what they sent was going to be understood, or that they'd written it in an appropriate way. The team all put their own filters on it and assumed something completely different. So assumptions are absolutely the silent killers. Everyone assumes something is obvious, or that someone else knows what they mean. But because we assume, we never check the reality. Feedback is regularly therefore avoided. Nobody wants conflict, or very few people enjoy conflict, so we tend to assume that feedback will be perceived negatively. So we then use time, don't have enough time, as an excuse to not give it, or I'll just do that later. And then issues fester. Decisions get made in the dark. Problems quietly grow. So communication isn't just about words. It's about translating intentions into something that the other person can actually understand and act upon. And without structure and clarity and rhythm, that translation fails every single time. So this isn't about somebody being lazy or stubborn or deliberately trying to be difficult. Most teams that I work with, that I'm aware of, don't set out to not do what the leader wants them to do. They don't set out to be particularly difficult. But the communication mistakes are structural issues. So just bear with me here a moment, because if they keep happening, they will quietly hold your team back, and they will stop them from becoming self-driven. So I see these patterns every time I work with founders. And as I read these, just notice which one you've possibly been accidentally training your team to repeat. So number one, seeking lots of opinions, but not making a decision. So quite often we want everyone's input, which is great, because it is good and necessary to consult with the team, get their experience, share their views and opinions. But if we're not then putting in our own opinion and making a decision based on what needs to be done as a result of that that consultation, the team will wait, and it'll wait, and then momentum will die, and projects will drag on, decisions won't be made, assumptions will absolutely be made, and everybody will make up their own story or their own version of events about what's been agreed. So I remember working with Martin, and he held 3 meetings a week to gather opinions from everyone, because he genuinely wanted to gain their buy-in. But no decisions were ever made, so projects ended up dragging on for months. And once we clarified who decided and who decides what, and actually who needed to be consulted with, so not everybody always needs to be consulted with, we really clarified what the whole decision-making process and consultation consultation piece was. That's when everything started to move forward. So avoiding conversations that matter is the next one. Nobody, in my experience, likes uncomfortable chats. But if you don't face into them, if you skip them, small issues will fester and eventually they will become big ones. When I worked with Laura, she absolutely hated giving feedback to a high potential member of her team. But this high potential member was underperforming. And she, let it go for 2 or 3 months. And that in that 2 or 3 months, that misalignment or that small misalignment turned into a major client complaint. Whereas if she'd have faced into the issue early, she probably or most likely wouldn't have had the client complaint at all. Now, in the end, it was a 10-minute conversation that fixed it. But because she'd put it off for ages, we then had an impact on the business. Overhelping and unintentionally enabling dependency. It's nice to be supportive. Absolutely, it's a good trait to be supportive, but you can, through doing too much support, teach the team to wait for you instead of allowing them to take the initiative. Doing too much quietly will erode autonomy, and it'll erode self-driven traits in people. And it can often be why your good people leave you, because they feel that they can't think for themselves, or they can't make decisions or be creative or show innovation, etc. Doing the task instead of delegating the outcome. Well, leaders often jump into get it done faster mode. So I'll just do it because it'll be done quicker or better or the way that I want it to be done. And the real win isn't to do the work yourself, it's delegating the outcome. Many leaders that I work with will take work back into their own zone, or they'll never give it out in the first place because they just think it's quicker or it will save the team time. It's one of the biggest mistakes, and it's why businesses don't see and have proactive employees. And then the final one is assuming people know what good looks like. I've mentioned assumption quite a few times. So we assume explaining something once is enough. We told them on day one what we wanted them to do. Why don't they know? Well, clarity can't be assumed. It's built, and it's built through repetition and over time. Without defining success clearly, people will fill in the gaps, often in ways that shape the meaning for them. And because they genuinely want to do a good job, they'll often do it in the way that they think they're being most helpful. But in reality, it just creates mistakes, or it creates dependency, or it creates frustration because people are overlapping with the jobs or the roles, the tasks of other people. And each of these mistakes will quietly drain the energy in the team, and it will quietly train the wrong behaviour. But let's be clear, they're not failures of intention to do the right thing. They are, though, failures of skill and or structure. And they're often amplified by the paradox imbalances that we spoke about a moment ago. Being supportive but driving results, hands-on but delegating, quick but thorough. These are all paradoxes that, if imbalanced and you're favouring one over the other, will cause you behavioural issues in your business. So now that we can see the mistakes, let's have a think about the real question, which is, how do we fix them? And how do we create that high-performing, self-driven, accountable team? So just close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. Imagine walking in, it's Monday morning, your team are already set out with their daily activities. They already know what the priorities are. Decisions are being made without panicked emails to you. Problems are being solved early and not late. You can breathe and you walk into your desk and you can focus on your own priorities. Imagine your team isn't waiting for permission. They're making decisions within those clear boundaries that you've set, and they're owning numbers and not excuses. When they come to you, they're presenting solutions and options and recommendations. And you, for the first time in a long time, are leading rather than firefighting. One of my clients, Sophie, a founder of a creative agency, said to me recently, I just sat back this morning and I watched my team solve a client issue without me, and I can't remember the last time that happened and the last time that I felt this relaxed. So just notice how you're feeling right now, imagining that version of your week in your business. It's not accidental, it's what the process does. If you have an infrastructure, it provides this clear ability to have the week, the working week, the working month that you want. It's not fantasy. So let's diagnose what's really happening in most businesses so you can see how we get from here to there. So I want to challenge a belief that many founders have, and that is that most of the time, the problem isn't the people. The problem for me is the system and the environment they have ultimately unintentionally created and now work within. Dependency shows up as repeating, as fixing, as chasing, as carrying people. So the founder might explain something, think it's been explained clearly, but then it comes back delivered wrong or late or half done. And so the founder does it themselves. This is helpful in the short term, but it's unsustainable in the long term. And I've seen this 100 times. So another one of my clients, James, was drowning in emails. He was rewriting the emails that his team were sending. He was redoing the work that his team should have owned. And when we redesigned the communication systems, his team stopped asking for permission on every task. He reclaimed his evenings and the business grew faster than he imagined. And the irony is that most capable founders are the ones who become the biggest bottlenecks because they think that they are the one that can do everything faster. They think that rescuing people is kind. But in the long term, it's unkind because it's unkind to you as the founder, it's unkind as the team because it stops everyone from growing. And before you all think, well, that's, she's blaming us, I'm not blaming you at all. I'm not here to be pointing fingers, and let's look at why. I really do want to, address that I'm not blaming or shaming anybody here, because the reality is, according to the Chartered Management Institute, 82% of UK leaders in the UK are accidental leaders. That means they've never had formal leadership and management training ever. How scary is that? Very often, these accidental leaders are promoted because they were brilliant at their previous job, or it was their time to be promoted. They'd done their time, and the person above left, so it was their time to step into their shoes. Or if they're a business owner, the business has probably grown organically, and before they know it, in a blink of an eye, they've got a team, and a big team. But none of their technical training has ever involved any people skills. So, the reality is they weren't broken when they became a leader. They were set up without a people manual. So yes, it's not their fault, but I want you to hear this. It is their responsibility to learn what leadership actually requires if they don't want to repeat the same frustrations over and over, especially as we go into, as we start this year, 2026. So no manual doesn't excuse staying stuck, but it does explain why willpower alone hasn't worked so far. So let's take a quick look now at the habits that are keeping things stuck so you can see what the opportunity is. Now, take this with love, because I had to come to this realization myself when I was an accidental manager. Some of your current behaviors, your daily routines are keeping you stuck and they're keeping your team stuck. So just again, and if you want to pop some, emojis or whatever in the chat, please feel free. Do these resonate with you? So how many times do you step in before somebody steps up because it's faster? How many times do you hint at expectations instead of stating them explicitly because it feels kinder? Do you avoid conflict hoping it will go away? Do you take work back when your team wobble because it's quicker? Or you think they're overloaded? Do you water down standards to avoid friction? Do you shrink expectations so no one gets upset? I'll just leave those hanging there for a moment. These are survival habits. They will have helped in the short term, but long term, they just create dependency. So the fix isn't about more effort. It isn't about working harder or longer. It's about being smart and having a smarter structure in place. So if you were nodding along thinking, oh, I do that one, that's great, because that awareness means you're already thinking about, how can I change this? What can I do differently? And that's the good news, because leadership is absolutely learnable, and that gives us our way forward. Leadership isn't a trait that only a lucky few are born with. It is a set of skills, mindsets, and behaviours. And all of these can be learned, practiced, developed, and importantly, embedded. So if leadership were a personality trait, most of the businesses I work with would be stuck forever, and they're not. So I'm going to share with you 3 key mindset shifts that for me change everything. And let's have a look at those now. So ownership is not a personality trait. It comes from process. So having a clear process of setting expectations, being clear on permissions and boundaries, and having a process in place to define and check in on accountability. Initiative comes from trained behaviours. It's not magic. You absolutely can teach people how to be or how to demonstrate initiative. And most teams don't step up because they're scared of messing up. So when you can remove fear, ambiguity, and guesswork, your people will shine every time. And it's all about lowering risk. So lowering the risk of taking initiative, lowering the risk of taking ownership, making things clear and putting things out there in a structured way. Because this is what it will cost you if you do nothing differently next year. So let me be really blunt. If nothing changes, nothing changes and everything repeats. So we're just starting off 2026 to have a think about, do you want the rest of the year to look and feel like 2025, which probably looked and felt like 24 and 23. So same fires, the same stress, the same bottleneck. The emotional cost is stress, exhaustion, resentfulness, less fulfillment, relationship issues, trust issues. The financial costs include missed opportunities, wasted time, lower productivity, high employee turnover, stalled growth. If you want 2026 to be different, it's about being intentional, and let's underline this, intentional now, because leadership doesn't magically improve with repeating another year of the same habits. And the real cost isn't another hard year. It's waking up 3 years from now with the same problems, but actually less energy and less desire to fix them. So what does the intentional route look like? Well, it's a focused, structured program of development. And let me talk to you about ASCENTS for a moment. So ASCENTS is the framework that I use every single time I take a founder out of chaos and into clarity. It's deliberate, it's intentional, but it's absolutely not magical. So we start off with A. So A is about assessing. So we stop guessing what the real problems are and we start using data-driven leadership insights to identify what the gaps are and start thinking about how we might then rectify those. S is about identifying and defining and then setting clear standards, which will beat just having good intentions every single time. C is about communicate. So we want to do that with clarity, consistently, and use structures and have rhythms of communication so that we've got this communication pulse that goes through the business at every level. E is about empowering the team. So creating ownership, but with boundaries. So people know where they stand, they know where the rules of play are, and they're empowered to get on with it. N is about navigating. So this is for the leader specifically, but navigating those leadership paradoxes that will create or kill initiative. T is about tracking. So we will put review processes, feedback processes, and measurements in place because it only gets done if we review it, right? And S then is about sustain. So how do we, through all those things that we've put in place, create a culture that is reinforced through those systems so it becomes sustainable? Because this is how teams become self-driven instead of founder-dependent. And this is why ASCENTS works. Doesn't rely on motivation and willpower alone. It is absolutely designed. So let me give you an example of what that looks like in practice and what it did for a founder called Tom. So Tom had a brilliant business. He had rapid growth. He had lots and lots of new starters to go alongside that rapid growth. And yet his turnover, his staff turnover was really high. Morale and engagement was really low and communication was just messy. Tom was exhausted. Everything ran through him. He had an open door policy. He was the one that people had to go through for every decision, every task, every activity. Everything ran through him. And what we did was we applied ASCENTS. So we didn't replace the team. We didn't try to magically motivate people and engage them. We applied ASCENTS. We assessed the real problems. We focused on the real issues and the impacts that they were having. We set clear expectations, created communication rhythms, empowered the team within those defined boundaries, coached Tom's leadership behaviours, and then tracked progress. And within 6 months, turnover had dropped, accountability in the team had improved, retention was better, engagement and motivation was better, and Tom was less stressed. He'd got his evenings back. He was able to take a lunch break. And very importantly, he'd regained that headspace so that he could start to think strategically again and actually start working on his business instead of in his business. That transformation was not luck. It was by design, completely by design. And so I'd like to offer you that opportunity to work with me as well, to follow a proven implementation path with absolute support and coaching, but most importantly, accountability. So you can avoid this costly trial and error of, finger in the air and hoping things will change. So let me show you what that looks like. So the ASCENTS program is a 90-day program. It's for businesses who are absolutely done carrying everything themselves. Over 90 days, we implement ASCENTS, and that will give you the people structures that your business needs. It's absolutely about implementation. It's not training. And we will work on the things that are relevant to your business. So we'll build, we'll test, and we'll embed those structures so you and your team actually change how you behave. what's included, and I'm not going to go into the detail of the program because there is too much to kind of cover here, but in top level, you will get a clear process with leadership diagnostics. You will have a very practical roadmap that you can action immediately. You can take it away and there'll be things that you can implement immediately. There will be clear expectations and standards that you can go away and set in your business, and I'll give you templates through which to do that. And then we'll look at the communication rhythms that stick, that will make a difference in your business. And again, there will be scripts and frameworks to help you with that. We'll look at how you can implement accountability structures so that you can hold people to account in a human and kind way without micromanaging. And then we will provide you with leadership coaching that trains and embeds new habits. And that'll all be wrapped up with 4 deep dive workshops and some real-time implementation support from me. So what you'll walk away with is a team that you can absolutely trust, that finally steps up and wants to step up, and that you're allowing to step up. And you will have the leadership capability to keep it that way. This isn't about fixing your team. It is about redesigning how leadership works for you in your business now, and how you want it to work in your business to take your business where you want it to go next. Because, you know, you didn't start your business to be stuck doing everything yourself. And the sooner you put those structures in place, the sooner you free yourself from the overwhelm and finally lead the way that your team is capable of being. So thank you so much for staying with me. I'm going to open it up to questions in a moment, but first I'd just like you to think, you know, if you've been nodding along thinking, yeah, that's me, I'm the one that's repeating, that's fixing, that's chasing or carrying, then it really is time to change that. And you've got 2 options for this year. You can have another 12 months of the same patterns and the same frustrations and think, yeah, webinar was very interesting, but that's it, thanks. Or you can have 90 days of focused redesign that will change how your team runs and how you lead. I've just run you through the ASCENTS program, my 90-day leadership redesign program. We won't just talk theory, we will rebuild how leadership works in your business so that you will have a team that makes smart decisions, owns outcomes, and frees you to lead strategically instead of firefighting daily. Now, I've opened up 6 spaces for the next cohort, which is starting February. There are only 6 spaces on the cohort, and these spots do go quickly. So I would encourage you to book the call now using the QR code or the link that's on the screen there. And I just want to underline that I don't work with everybody. I only take founders that are ready to act, that are prepared to take action, because this program demands commitment and delivers real transformation. But as I said before, nothing changes if nothing changes. So if you just want to come along and be told a couple of things and expect that to make a difference, you know, it won't work. You need to be prepared to commit and to take action as a result. So, you know, if that's you, I would absolutely love to have a conversation with you. So on your free strategy call, I will personally review your current setup and we'll look at exactly where ASCENTS would start in your business and outline your next 90 days. So you'll see clearly how to move forward and what that would look like for you. So don't let another year look like the last one, because the calendar will move forward regardless. And the question is, will your leadership move forward as well? So click on the QR code or scan the QR code, click on the link. Remember, there are only 6 spaces available for the next 3 days, and when they're gone, they're gone. So let's turn what you imagined earlier into the way that your team actually operates within 90 days, because it is absolutely possible. Thank you so much for listening. And now let's open up to any questions.